Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. It is Wednesday the 3rd of September. Thank you for joining me. A cold front is on the way. It starts in the lower South Island on Friday, moves into the North Island on Saturday, and by Sunday the whole country feels the polar airflow with temperatures down. So let's try and break that all down for you, make sense of what is going on. We've got high pressure at the moment around the top part of New Zealand, plenty of cloudy weather still coming in off the Tasman Sea, and a few light showers. Otherwise it is mostly dry, and a few clouds also clipping the eastern side of the North Island. Around the South Island, drier weather certainly kicking in, and out to sea, that is the building up of the next front that is on its way. Plenty of thunderstorms offshore, well away from us towards Australia, but that indicates some of the energy that is moving our way as we go into the weekend. So a cold front, windy weather with possibly damaging winds here and there, and of course some squally heavy showers, and then the cold airflow comes on through. So let's break that down for you. Here is the high pressure belt that is bringing in the more settled weather for New Zealand for today. Lighter winds in many places, still a bit windy through Wellington and Cook Strait, and in the very lower part of the South Island as we go into tonight, Fiordland, Southland, Stewart Island, that area, you'll start to feel that northwesterly breeze developing. That breeze between high pressure to the north and this very large storm down near Antarctica, where it is staying. It is not coming up towards us. But you can see there's a big southerly here coming into Tasmania. That is what is moving towards us. And between the high that is over us now and the next one coming out of Australia, there's going to be a gap that forms between them. And you'll see that in a moment. We'll make a bit more sense of the incoming weather. So frosts, let's start with that. Frosty conditions still around tomorrow morning. You can see the breeze arriving around Southland, so those frosts are either not happening or they're very light. Heavier frosts in the purple, and a few frosts around the central plateau. Nothing much really around the North Island. And as the cloud on the front moves in on Friday, not really a below zero sort of morning, so you're not really seeing much in the way of frosty conditions. Saturday morning, the front moves into the North Island. South Island starts to clear up again as the next big high pushes in. So you'll feel the frosty weather returning, mostly around the mountains and the ranges, inland valleys, that sort of thing, but might spread out a wee bit into some of the plains. So let's make sense of the map on Thursday. The storm actually weakening at 9:55. It got down to the 920 hectopascal range, well south of New Zealand, but between the storm to our south and the settled high to the north, you've got this squash zone of windy westerlies. The worst of those winds are south of New Zealand on Thursday, but they do develop around the lower South Island as we go into the day and around Cook Strait. Everybody feels those northwesterly winds or westerlies, and in the North Island, subtropical winds starting to move in. So if you're in the eastern side, Hawke's Bay, Waited Upper, the Gisborne, Tairāwhiti area, you'll enjoy those temperatures going up and the sun coming out after a few kind of gloomy wet months that you've had. By Friday, warm and windy around the North Island, warm for this time of the year, high pressure to the northeast, subtropical winds coming down and around the North Island, and they'll warm up even further in the east as that west to northwesterly cranks up. On the west coast, rain, falling as snow in the mountains, and behind it, the southerly flow starts to come on through, which will drop the temperatures, and that moves further up the country as we go in overnight and into Saturday. So with that front comes the windy weather. Here is lunchtime Friday, the areas in purple around the Southern Alps and leaning especially to the northeastern side of the South Island, and then developing around Cook Strait, the Marlborough Sounds, Wellington, and the ranges of Waited Upper, going right up even into parts of Manawatu and Hawke's Bay. Leaning to the eastern side, you'll get those gusts anywhere between gale force, about 63 k's an hour, gusting right up to maybe over 110, 120, maybe even higher than that inland for some parts of the South Island. Then on Saturday, 3 o'clock in the morning, it shifts further up the North Island. Generally speaking, this isn't too major for most places, but along the ranges of the eastern North Island, those gusts go over 120 kilometres an hour, and then you've also got some gusty weather coming off the Tasman Sea, not necessarily causing problems, but just blustery weather. And then our final map, 6 o'clock Saturday evening, once the southerly is now really going across the country, down around the lower South Island, it's more of a westerly flow. Even northwesterlies are still around, and that will produce very strong winds, damaging winds, hugging the Southland coastline, Fovo Strait, and around Stewart Island. And certainly down around the Auckland Islands, very windy weather. These are wind gusts of 120, 130 kilometres an hour. So we've got a bit of stormy weather around. Here is Saturday. Big high out to the west, another high out to the east. The eastern one is pulling down the warm subtropical airflow. The Australian high pressure zone dredging up the southerlies. So between the two, you got a convergence zone, northerlies bumping into southerlies. That can produce these big downpours that you see in the yellow and green shading around the North Island. So if you look on the rain radar on Saturday, you'll see that front coming in. It'll be patchy and broken up with some heavy downpours, maybe some thunderstorms in there, and other areas just getting a few showers, nothing too much to talk about. Now the South Island, as the wintry airflow comes through, we do have winter weather conditions around parts of the South Island. So if you're in Lambing, be aware it'll be wet and cold as those winds curve around, southerlies, but coming in as an easterly or a southeasterly for the South Island. But remember, the airflow itself isn't coming from Antarctica. Despite it being a southerly and the polar air coming in, track the origins of the isobars, it's actually coming out of Australia. So that's why we're not going to be seeing snow down to sea level, even though it'll be colder for you as we go through Saturday. So a bit of a dynamic day on Saturday. By Sunday, the cold front's cleared even the Chatham Islands, but look at the polar airflow right up to the far north. So the whole country will be colder on Sunday, but not necessarily stormy. There will be windy weather around, especially coming off the Tasman Sea and some parts of Southland, as we mentioned before, that windy weather all sort of surging by, coming around even to Otago Peninsula. Still cold weather, still a few wintry showers on the hills and ranges, snow flurries in the mix, but it won't be much. These pale blue shading of the showers shows that it's not very much. Many places will be dry, colder, and a little bit windy, what we call a fresh southerly. Let's have a look at Monday. So we've got a new low forming up here right next to Tonga. Hello to anyone from Tonga and Fiji watching. Some wet weather up here developing for you going into Monday, but high pressure is in the New Zealand area, moving in now. That pushes away the polar airflow for most places. It will still linger in the eastern side of the North Island until the afternoon. By evening, it should be gone. And now we've got another nor'wester coming in. Welcome to spring, right? This is what we get. Up and down, warm one day, cold the next. So warmer winds are arriving on Monday, and then by Tuesday that high comes into the top of the North Island again. That keeps this developing storm offshore from us. That is a storm. That is getting into the gale force territory all the way around the centre of it and some heavy rain in there. But the high is our protective layer. That should keep that low away from us. But at the same time, there's more unsettled weather in the lower part of New Zealand, so the next burst of rain comes into the west coast. Gale force winds around the northeastern side of the South Island and around Cook Strait, Wellington, very southern parts of Wairarapa. And our final map for Wednesday of next week, 7 days from today, shows the high not very strong and slipping northwards. The storm to our east getting deeper, but because it's tracking sort of southwards, it's trying to maybe move towards the Chatham Islands, but not so much for the North Island or the South Island. But that surge of gales moves up next Wednesday. So another surge of severe gales in the central part of New Zealand, heavy west coast rain, another cold front, temperatures dropping again in the very south, and there's a polar airflow coming back into Tasmania. So certainly quite a few moving parts to our weather. It's very true spring fashion, classic textbook spring at the moment in New Zealand. Remember what I said the other day, spring is all about winter slowly fading away and hints of summer slowly coming in. That's exactly what we're seeing over the next couple of weeks. That's all from me. Have a great day. I'll catch you again tomorrow, Thursday.